Because I think even the media, it's going so fast, the media is struggling to keep
really
up.
Simple framework. We were running 7% debt, deficit. That's 4% more than we should be running, at least. When I worked at the Office of Management and Budget in 1984, when we were freshmen in college, I learned that the government tries to spend 20%, tries to tax 20%, and that balances the budget. It happened one year, 1999. But 20% was the magic number. That's drifted up to 27%. And that drift really accelerated with Trump's first term, when he just wanted to spend, and then COVID. And then Biden was just like, pull out all stops. And we've normalized this giant deficit spending, and that will literally lead us to our destruction. Elon was one of the few guys talking about it on the campaign trail. Democrats and Republicans just wanted to look the other way. And he got that focused. And so Bessent is one of us, the opposite of Kendrick Lamar's song. He's a macro guy. He understands the plumbing as well as anybody in the world. And so he knows my job is to get debt to GDP starting to head from 135 back to 100. My job is to get the deficit from 7% to 3%. And that's not easy, right? Especially with the president who doesn't want to cut taxes. So for him, it's growth, growth, and growth, right? So cut regulation, confidence back in the country, growth. I was having a off-the-record chat with him, and it was a little bit like, hey, my job is to get the gold price lower. And I was like, oh, you can't do that to Bitcoin. And he was like, I think we're going to be so pro-crypto that adoption should outweigh it. But if Bessent does his job well, and Elon helps by cutting waste in the government, which that's going to be harder to do, the pace of Bitcoin acceleration will slow. Right? There are always two vectors. One is the macro story, and one is adoption. I think adoption is about to accelerate, and that should overwhelm the macro story. But the macro story is also important, and it's not just a U.S. macro story. Europe's a mess with their deficits right now. Japan China is probably the biggest mess. Bessent just said today, China is an economy in more trouble than any he's seen in his whole life. Pretty big statement for the Secretary of Treasury to say that about your second largest economy in the world. And so even if the U.S. gets it right, the rest of the world's going to have a hard time getting it right. So I still think the tailwind's there for macro, but that's what you got to watch. And, we'll see. They've got the first, reconciliation coming up next month. The House is this close, and the Senate is this close. And so while Trump's got this momentum, he's going to run into the wall of Congress pretty soon, and it's going to be harder than you think.
Well, I say, the deficit is supposed to be countercyclical. Is, when you're in a recession, you should have a deficit to stimulate the economy, and then theoretically, like Mike said, you're supposed to run a surplus, which has only happened once. If you're running 7% in literally the best of times, there's nothing better that could be happening right now. It just seems like something bad's going to happen someday. I don't know what it is, but we're at full employment. Everything's great. Stock market's all-time high. Everything's all-time high. If we're running 7% deficit, something bad's going to happen. And that would be my argument. And Mike said, I like to zoom out. I do like to zoom out on this one. The little tariff tantrums here and there, I don't know. I have no insight if it's going to be good or bad or whatever. But if you zoom out in any kind of multi-year time frame, 1 or 2, 3, 4 years, people are going to want to escape paper money that's being debased at a really rapid rate and go into hard assets like real estate, stocks, gold even, or digital gold, right? And so that's the trade. And getting out of paper money. And you're talking about the Zimbabwe dollar. Yeah, it's one of the worst paper currencies. But the U.S., we debased our currency 8% in 2021, and everyone's like 3-something. Oh, that's cool. You do that your entire life, it's 90% of your wealth is gone, right? And I think
tell them the story about the British pound sterling.
Oh yeah, no, it's my favorite. The oldest currency on earth, 1,000 years. And when I was at Tiger Management, Lady Thatcher was on our advisory board. And, Julian would get busy sometimes. And so my job would be to sit there for 8 hours with her and talk. And, so fascinating. And that was when the ERM, exchange rate mechanism preceding the euro was coming in and whether the pound was going to go in or not. I got the ultimate, tutorial. I just sat there and talked about it. 1,000 years they've been doing this. It used to be convertible into, of course, a pound sterling. And now it takes 184 pieces of paper, pound sterling, to buy a pound of sterling silver. And again, that's the good paper currency.
Right.
Zimbabwe, Argentina.
184.
That's crazy. That's insane.
But And so I think
It's worth
Mike's point is so
184th of what it started out as.
Yeah.
Mike's point is so important. We're having this massive baby boom to new generation switch, and those people they grew up online, mobile phones, mobile money totally makes sense to them. They don't, it's no biggie. And here's the thing I think is super important. The Fed manipulated the bond market, $9 trillion of buying, which was 200% of all mortgages issued in the United States, one of the biggest policy errors of all time, drove the mortgage rate down to 2.5, the 10-year to 50 basis points or whatever. They basically dared you not to buy a house. And people did. Record number of people did. Every house in America went up 50%. So there's a whole generation of kids that literally can't afford a house. So they're trading, speculating, whatever you want to call it, in crypto. And I actually think it's totally rational, right? Like, I don't have a problem with that. As that money transfers, those people will be buying crypto assets from,
it's
as the next generation comes in. And it'll continue.
The price of a
to rise.
house from 2012, when Satoshi kicked off, 09. So 2012, when we were getting about 2012, 13, to now has doubled in America. Doubled.
Yeah.
It went from 200,000 to 400,000.
It's crazy.
Roughly.
Well, and there's you mentioned the young people too, and I'm not that young, but I graduated.
Salaries haven't doubled.
No, they haven't. But I graduated right into the great financial crisis from college.
Yours did. Let's be clear about that.
Thank you, Mike. But the millennials, the right in the main millennials, not even forget the Zoomers who they definitely couldn't afford a house right now. But the millennials graduated into the Great Recession, the Great Financial Crisis, and then when they finally were about to go be able to buy houses, then everything mooned when people moved out of the cities and bought houses during COVID.
Yeah.
And the rates are higher than they've been in 30 years.
So you're complaining that you don't own a house.
It's not the best. Yeah.
You're complaining you don't own a house.
That's right. But I mean, it's an iconic thing. And did the houses double in value or did the dollar debase? I mean, is it both? It's both, right?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. But yeah, again, assets are really driven by interest rates. And when you have interest rates, one of the interesting things now is, so like, I mortgaged up everything I owned when it was 2.5%. Even like I didn't really need to. I was like borrow as much as I can against that house at 2.5%.
Yeah.
And now that 30-year mortgages are 7%, you look at the value of a big mortgage and you're like, whoa, it's
Making money.
You've made a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like sometimes as much as 50% of what you thought your mortgage was but you can't monetize that. You can't transfer the mortgage. And so you're kind of stuck in your house. I'm not giving up that mortgage.
Another reason why the
That's why
houses are
house
so
sales
expensive.
are record lows.
That's right.
Even though the price is record highs, no one can afford to move
Right,
because they have such a great mortgage.
Right, the average person just owns one house, and if they sell it, they've got to take out a new mortgage, and it could be triple the monthly
It's
cost.
a fascinating time with record prices and record low transactions. Like